Here we go. Hi, everybody. So today's lesson is about the living world, which is a portion of your exam, one of the things that you'll be tested on. So I'm going to share the screen. Just give me a moment. There we go. So in the living world, just a little reminder of the living world. Um, the living world, basically, we talk mainly about the energy that is transferred from plants and then other consumers after that. So, plants, because they are the first in line, we call them primary producers. If you remember this back in Sec 1, part of the food chain, if you remember this, plants being the first thing, the first part of the food chain. And then from that point on, consumers, so the first ones, the primary consumers, will eat the plants. And then those will eat these animals. The second consumers will eat the primary consumers. And then the third consumers will eat the second consumers. So it's all like a food chain, right? And the plants being first in line. So it's really important that the primary producers are constantly being produced because if there's a problem with plants, then it causes a problem everywhere else above. Common sense, right? But think about it. Us humans, we're at the top of this triangle. And if let's say for some reason there's a drought and cows cannot eat anything anymore, well, then we will not be able to produce any meat. And if we don't have meat, then we have less resources to eat, for example. That's just an example. So it all comes down to these plants. And then eventually, when those tertiary consumers, so when they die, we go back in the chain and they get decomposed thanks to all the bugs that will start decomposing them. They go back into the soil and giving nutrients to the plants. And then the whole cycle starts over again. But these plants, so they need and they strive on nutrients from the ground, but they also need something else. Anybody remember, what does a plant need to survive? Let's see. You can write your answer on the chat or unmute yourself. What does a plant need to survive? Name one thing. Yes, water, very good. Oxygen, not quite. Oxygen, the plants produce oxygen, but they need something else, very similar to oxygen, the opposite. They need water and what's that other gas that they take in and transform into oxygen? Anybody remember that? Carbon. Yes, carbon dioxide. Very good. So, yes, plants need water, they need carbon dioxide, but they also need something else. Like, can a plant grow in the dark? No, exactly. They need light. Very good. So, these plants thrive, they really thrive when they are, when they have a lots or proper amount of water, proper amount of light. So, those are key factors for plants to grow. So when we talk about primary productivity, we're talking about those plants, the productivity, like how much are being produced. And the primary productivity of an ecosystem is the amount of new biomass generated by its producers. So in other words, it's energy. Biomass is the total mass of organic matter in an ecosystem at any given time. So organic matter, living. Organic means living. So the more plants I have, the more organic matter I can get. Remember when in this pyramid, you see here, down here, that's the organic matter that eventually helps to grow plants. So if I have more plants, everything else on top grows better, eats better, grows better, energy is transferred, and all of it becomes back to biomass, which then helps plants. You see, it's like a continuous circle. So, meaning more plants equal more energy. And that energy is transferred from the plant to the next animal. So let's say a plant is eaten by an insect. So that energy from the plants goes to the insects. And then from the insects, the next thing, what can eat an insect? Can you name one, Nathan? Name something that eats an insect. Nathan Brisebois. Oh, Kayla beat you to it, guys. Birds, yes. And then birds are eaten by something else. Yeah, a cat. You get what I'm saying. It's a food chain. It's a continuous food chain. C'est bon. So I'll give you a minute to write this down. So keep in mind, when I talk about primary productivity, I'm talking about plants. So more plants equal more biomass, equal more energy. So now let's see together what are some of the things that can actually increase primary productivity, so increase the amount of plants. If you see up here, this is a northern region, and down here is a southern region, like warmer. So I already gave you an answer. What is one of the factors that increase the production of plants? Kayla, what do you think? What can make an area, a region, or an ecosystem produce more plants? So we see you have a polar area, and then you have, this is actually in the Amazon. It's a picture taken from Brazil. So what do you think? Well, more water definitely is one of the factors, more water. What else? Nathan Freiberg. We went from polar regions to the Brazil. It's the main difference.
Wait, what?
What can make plants increase in productivity?
Plants?
Yeah, so I go from polar regions, like the north, and this is Brazil. How come there's more plants in Brazil?
It's hotter.
Yeah, warm. Basically, one of the things is warmth, exactly.
Uh-huh.
So we discussed before that more light
Mm-hmm.
helps plants, right?
Yeah.
More water that Kayla said that before. And I think the next one, oh, this one, the warmer temperatures. Exactly what you said. And that's why you don't have a lot of plants in the north, because the temperature, the environment is not conducive for plants growing. So the plants that are there are really small shrubs, lichens, things like that. They don't grow much. There's not much going on there. So those are the key factors to remember. If we ask you, in an ecosystem, what can increase the productivity of plants? Those are the four key things, four key factors that increase plant productivity. So, and it's common sense. If you want to grow a plant, I'm not going to put it in the dark. I'm going to put it near the sun, right? If I want to grow a plant, I got to give it more water, and it needs to be in a warm temperature. If I stick my plant outside when it's minus 30, well, obviously it will die, right? And lastly, here, the essential nutrients. If I have better, like if I put fertilizers in the soil, well, again, this will help the productivity of these plants. This is very logical. I'll give you a minute to write this down. The four key factors that increase productivity of plants. So we say primary because plants are the first. They are the primary, like the first level in the food chain, like you saw in the pyramid that I showed you before. Tell me when you're done writing. Nathan Brisebois, he's still there. All right, perfect. So now what happens, because, things happen. It's never so perfect, unfortunately. Sometimes ecosystems are disturbed. There are changes that happen in the ecosystem. And this is what we call disturbances. So when I talk disturbance, I don't mean disturbance like you're stopping an event or you're disturbing somebody who's sleeping or something. A disturbance in the sense of an ecosystem, we're talking about damages, things that damage the ecosystem. So I'm curious to know what you guys think are some of the examples that damage our ecosystem. There's so many examples. Nathan Brisebois, I haven't heard from you. Give me anything, any examples that can damage ecosystem. Yes, definitely. Forest fires. Because then that includes burning all of the trees and habitat of the animals and the animals themselves. So that's definite a damage to the ecosystem. All right, what about Kayla? Another example of a disturbance. Pollutions, yes. Traveling and it goes back into the water. Yep. Excellent. Nathan Freiberg, can you think of another disturbance that damages our ecosystem?
Wait, what, miss?
What? Give me another example of a disturbance that damages an ecosystem.
Like a disturbance?
Something that damages our ecosystem.
Ecosystem meaning like what?
So an ecosystem incorporates or includes the vegetation, the animals, their habitat, the whole thing.
Uh, uh, what is a disturbance?
Something that damages an ecosystem. So we've already named two examples.
I don't know, like fossil fuels.
Yeah, fossil fuels, excellent. Like the
Ooh,
oil spills, that's really good. Because an ecosystem is not just
too
on
much
land;
like that.
it can be in the ocean as well. That's very good. Yeah,
All right.
your
So that's a
favorite.
good one.
It's a good one. Yeah.
All right.
Good. I'm gonna write all this down in just a second. So you can write what is a disturbance first. So a disturbance is a damage in the ecosystem, and it can lead to elimination of organisms. So if we have forest fires, well, that can eliminate the animals that are living in that particular ecosystem, or eliminate plants in that ecosystem. And it has a ripple effect. If you have less of plants in that area, then it can cause problems in the food chain on the long run. If we look at the glaciers melting because of global warming, that's an ecosystem that's being highly affected lately. And this obviously causes elimination of polar bears. So there's always an effect, there's always a consequence. And disturbances can be natural or human. So let's see. Nathan Freiberg, You said fossil fuels. Would you say that is natural or human origin? Nathan Freiberg. Would you say this is natural or human origin?
Um, like what is natural or human origin?
The fossil fuel example that you said no.
It is natural.
No, why would like fossil fuels, who digs them? Is it naturally just coming out from the ground?
Nah, it's humans.
It's human. So that's human, definitely.
Ugh.
It's okay. Kayla, you mentioned pollution. So what would that be, human or natural? Human. Definitely human. Nathan Brisebois, you mentioned forest fires. Would that be human or natural? I guess, but the ones that we hear about in California, this is due to high heat and no rain for a long period of time. So yeah, but the ones that were occurring in California and BC, high heat, so high temperatures with no rain, no precipitation for a long period of time. Well, in that case, it would be natural. And we talk about the natural onset of forest fires. I don't think, I have never heard anyways, of humans deliberately burning an entire forest. I've never heard of that. Unless it's accidental and there's like, I don't know, somebody started a fire by accident, but it's usually natural, usually. Good job. Good job, guys. So let's write these examples down. Natural disturbances are triggered by the environment. It's not human. It's not something you can control. So storms, that's an example. Look at tornadoes, how much damage they can cause, and this is natural, of course. Even snowstorms like blizzards like these, or ice storms, those often affect the ecosystem. Volcanoes, forest fires, good job. Droughts, so you have periods of droughts like in this picture where we go on for long periods of time, no precipitation. Floods, so again, due to ecosystem changing from melting ice caps and that sort of thing, it could cause on the long run floods. And periods of frost. Heat waves. So these are all natural. And remember, the point is we're talking about here disturbing an ecosystem, including the plants that are in those ecosystems. And now those human origin disturbances that you mentioned before. So we have, usually they're all human activity based. Littering. So this fall under the category of pollution. Actually, I'll write this down. Pollution in general. So air and land, for example. But air, land, water. Air, land, water. There's a story in the Philippines where there are some factories that are near the water over there, and they release all their toxic waste in the water. But the toxic waste contains mercury. And what does that do? The mercury is ingested by fish and causes crazy mutations to the fish. But then who eats the fish? The human. And so the human eventually ends up eating the fish that's contaminated with mercury. Right? And then that causes obviously diseases. So these fish are also mutated. So again, this causes a major disturbance in the fish species in that area in the Philippines. When I say mutation, like some of these fish have extra fins in areas that wouldn't usually have. That's an example. Deforestation. We literally, like in this picture here and this one, we will completely remove forests so that we can actually have habitat, houses, industry, etc. That's why nowadays a lot of the major parks in Quebec, in Canada, are protected by the government. Otherwise, we would have had a lot of forests removed so that we can have, buildings and streets, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a law. You can't just start building anywhere you want. There's an actual law protecting the forest. Oil spills, just like Nathan said, definitely. So there has been incidences where fish and other species that are dead, of course, get to land on the shore and filled with oil inside their bodies. They're like completely black. I can see if I can find a picture. Oil spill. I'll find a picture and show you. Where is it? Oh, there it is. You see this one? This pelican is full of black oil affected by the oil spill. See this one? Poor little thing. So you can imagine after a long time, some of these species will go extinct. It's a major effect on the ecosystem. Okay. So we said pollution or littering, deforestation, oil spills, fishing and hunting. That's another one, that regulation that is implemented by the law, by the government. There's certain periods of time where you cannot go fishing for certain species. And they do that to protect the species. Because if we all go fishing for the same species, then that species can actually go extinct over time. So in order to protect it, when you go fishing, they do not allow you to fish certain species. And even during the season for mating, for production of fish, fertilization, I said mating, but fertilization of the eggs, there's a certain time where you cannot go fishing. You have to let them grow and live through their, the normal development. And then you can go fishing. And even at that, you cannot go and get like 20 fish of the same species. Okay, there's a limit. You can have like max 5 or 7, something like that. And this one's interesting too, like that picture in here, invasive species. So naturally, you have certain animals that grow in the ecosystem. But if you bring in a new species that's not there usually, then you're disturbing the ecosystem. And those species can also bring along their viruses. So humans can bring diseases. They can bring in new species carrying diseases without knowing it. And this will be disturbing the ecosystem. Again, questions? All right, so let's go. Let's ask before I continue. Nathan Brisebois, Tell me, let's see, deforestation. Is that human or natural disturbance? Yes. Kayla, let's go with fishing. Is a human or natural disturbance? Yes. Um, Nathan Freiberg. Tornadoes, natural or human disturbance?
Natural.
Yes, of course. That's an easy one. Okay, let's go with Nathan Brisebois. Let's see, bringing in new species, human or natural? Yes, human. How about flooding? Let's go with Kayla. Flooding, human or natural? Yes, very good. Nathan Freiberg. Let's go with volcanic eruptions.
Natural.
Yes, that's an easy one, right? So I think you get the idea. Natural is really humans have nothing to do with it. And all the other activities that humans get involved, like pollution, then that's definitely um, human origin. And the last thing for today is the effect of these disturbances on the ecological balance. So, what does that do? All these things, the forest fires, the drought, the flood, what does that do to the ecological balance? So, these can lead to extinction of certain species. So, obviously, if I have a whole area of a forest burned or deforested for development, all of these animals need to go somewhere. Or the plants that were there that used to serve as food, primary food for animals, now those animals have nothing to eat. So they either die or they go somewhere else, change ecosystem. So it's a big problem. Here's an example. I'll give you guys a minute to look at the picture. So we have a food web. Remember, a food web is multiple food chains together. We have the producers at the bottom, the phytoplankton, underwater plants, shore plants, the lower level consumers, the higher level consumers, and the predators. Right? So, question to you guys, what would happen if humans fish smaller fish too much, too many times? I'll give you a minute to think about it. If we fish too much, the smaller fish, what can happen to the ecosystem? I'd like to hear Nathan Freiberg. What do you think? Who's affected by
About
this?
what?
Sorry?
You said what? Like what?
So if we start fishing smaller fish too many times, which other animals are affected?
Like which are affected by the fish?
Yeah, by basically removing the smaller fish from the food web by fishing too much.
Like birds, larger fish,
Look at the
and
picture. Yeah, exactly. Larger fish. What else?
larger fish, birds,
Yeah,
and gulls and terns.
right. And if these don't have this, because that's the only thing they're eating, you see. So if they don't have smaller fish to eat, who else is affected by this?
Um, uh, Eagles and ospreys.
Exactly. So the eagles, they may find other food like the ducks, but then that's going to be a problem. If the eagles only have ducks to eat, then we'll have a problem with the ducks because I mean they'll be that they don't have anything else to eat but the ducks. So eventually we'll run out of ducks too. Do you see what kind of problem this causes? And then the osprey, same thing. They only, according to this picture, only eat the larger fish. So if there's no larger fish, we can see an extinction of these birds, these predators. You see? So all from one act, the human act of fishing when it is not the time to fish, the smaller fish, it causes a domino effect on the entire food chain or food web for this matter. Okay. And so if we ever ask you this question, what would happen if you have to look at the arrows? Where is it going? What is affected along on the long run? Hmm? And yeah, this is the answer. The gulls, the wading birds or wading birds, and larger fish can die because they have nothing else to eat. And then I didn't even write, but even these guys don't have anything else. The predators won't have anything else to eat. So what time is it? All right. Questions? So I'm going to stop here. I'm going to leave you with one question. I need you to write down on a piece of paper. What do you think? So, what would happen if we ran out of phytoplanktons? What would happen if we ran out of phytoplanktons? Nathan Brisebois, what do you think? Oh, for some reason, there's pollution at the bottom of the ocean, and then it's causing all the phytoplankton to die. It says small fish would die off, which could cause bigger fish to die. Yep. So it really is a ripple effect. Okay, I'll just stop sharing now, just a second. So guys, can I get a 5 if you understand this topic? A 3 so-so.